So, you're a buyer, you are pumped up, you're excited. It's been a long process. You finally got an offer accepted on a home. Who knows, maybe you've written dozens of them, maybe it's your first time out. But the bottom line is, you've bought a home. You're excited, break out the bubbly, everything's done, you've got a home. Not exactly. There's a thing called an escrow period that you're going to need to go through, and there's things you need to do during this escrow period, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What you need to know as a buyer about an escrow. Hi, my name is Rich Simonin. I am the owner and manager of Westco Realtors in Riverside, California, which since 1985 has been the largest independent real estate company in our area. We do these videos because we get asked these questions by our clients all the time, and the hope is that we can give you some information here that's going to help you in whatever phase of the real estate process you are in. There are no hooks, there's no fees, put your credit cards away, we're not trying to sell you anything. We are here to simply give you information, and we've got a variety of videos, but today we're going to talk about buyers, what you need to know about the escrow process. So let's jump in. First of all, let's talk about the definition of an escrow. It's kind of a weird word. The sterile definition is escrow is a neutral third party, but let's get away from that. Let's give you the real world. The bottom line is that consider escrow like the hub of the wheel. They're the data collector. Escrow is the individual, it's called the escrow officer. The escrow officer is the one that makes sure that everybody that's involved in your transaction has done what they are supposed to have done before they say, okay, let's close and let the title pass from the seller to the buyer. They make sure the termite people have got a report in. They make sure you've got insurance on the home. They make sure the lender's done what they're supposed to do. They make sure you as the buyer have done what you're supposed to do. The seller's done what they're supposed to do. The insurance is in place. It's a very detailed job, and an escrow officer, no matter how much money they get paid, is not paid enough. They're all underpaid. It's an incredibly painstaking job, but that's what they do. They make sure everything gets done the way it's supposed to before you allow the title to transfer. So that's what they do. Let's talk about what you're going to need to do as a buyer, or what you need to be aware of. First thing you need to understand is you're going to be given a set of escrow instructions. Sometimes some escrow companies will use the purchase agreement and also let it work as the escrow instructions, but most places don't, and the reason they don't is because escrow officers are not licensed real estate people, and they're not really going to want to plow through this purchase agreement. So the bottom line, escrow instructions come out, and the first thing they say is, look, you've sold it for this amount of money, or you've bought it for this amount of money, you're going to put this amount of money down, this is when you're going to close escrow, the seller's going to do these things like a roof certification or whatever you want them to do, or whatever. They get the details correct, and in essence, you are given a copy, the seller's given a copy, you both sign your individual copies, and then they're put together. It's called in part, in which case you now have a fully signed, fully executed escrow. It's not like your purchase agreement where everybody signed the same document. There'll be two separate documents. Okay, for you, the buyer, what's going to be in those escrow instructions? Well, you're going to have a statement of information. That's going to come from the title company, and it's going to ask a lot of very detailed information questions about you. Your full name, social security number, where you were born, when you were married, if indeed you are married, how long you've been married, how long you've lived at your current address. Here's why they need to know that. They need to make sure that you, the buyer, are not wanted for some kind of murder somewhere, or back child support payments, or alimony, or there's any judgments against you. The more common your name, the more detailed information they're going to need, as opposed to a name like mine, in which they don't need a lot of great information, because Simonin isn't that common of a name. But if your name is Jones or Smith or Brown or Hernandez, expect you're going to need to fill out a lot of paperwork on that, because they have to make sure that you, Mr. Good Guy Bob Smith, is not the same as the bad guy Bob Smith. So you have to fill out your statement of information. There's also going to be some paperwork in there that wants to know how you want to take title to this property. And that is something your real estate agent can't advise you on, because that's getting out of our area of expertise. Our suggestion is you talk to your accountant or you talk to your attorney. Most likely your accountant can do that, because there's some tax implications on whether you take it as a married couple, joint tenants, tenants in common, husband and wife's community property. There's a lot of different ways to take title. You're going to have to speak to someone else about that, but you're going to need to know that, and that's going to be in there, because the escrow officer needs to know how to prepare the grant deed. granting the home from the old owners to you and how you're going to take title to it. There's going to be some insurance information in there. They're going to need to know who your insurance agent is because you're going to need insurance on this home. If you don't have an insurance agent, your agent can recommend one, but most people know somebody in the insurance business and give them a call. It used to be insurance could be done in a half an hour over the phone. Now it takes a little bit more time, so they just need to know who you're going to have as your insurance agent, so the escrow officer knows who to talk to, and then it'll also represent in there that your deposit that you put down when you purchased the home, when you wrote the contract and you gave your agent a check for the deposit, that money is going to get deposited in escrow to be used as part of the cash you need in order to close this escrow. What happens to that deposit if the escrow doesn't close? That is the subject of a whole nother video of which we have, and you can find it somewhere on our website. We won't go into that now. Just understand that for now, it's part of the money you need for what it is you need to do to purchase the home. All right, what happens next? The loan qualification process. Hopefully, most of your loan qualification process has already been done to this point. A lot of it should have been done before you submitted the offer, because in most cases you need to have a letter that goes in with the offer that tells the seller you can indeed do what it is that you want to do. So if you still have any remaining paperwork to do for your lender, get it done ASAP. You need to get on it right away. Don't delay. We're going to talk about a 17-day time period you have here to make everything happen. So if you're sitting around and horsing around not getting your lender information for 10 days, you're going to have a problem down the road. Get it done now. You're also going to need to order out the appraisal. Your lender will do that, but you are going to need to write them a check because that gets paid for up front so that the appraiser can go out and let the lender know that the home is worth what it is you're trying to buy it for, so you can get the loan on it that you need in order to make this thing happen. So just be aware of that, okay? You need to understand about what's going on with your loan. Get on that right away. The next thing you need to do probably is going to be a home inspection, and we highly recommend that you get one. A home inspection is something, again, you're going to pay cash for up front, and your agent will recommend an inspector. The inspector is going to go out to that house, and the inspector is going to inspect it from top to bottom on what is happening with the home, what works, what doesn't work, what may need fixing, what doesn't need fixing, things of that nature. The seller is going to give you a disclosure statement that should state all that as well, but a lot of times there's things wrong with the home that the seller either A, doesn't even know about, could be a bad plug in the guest room that they haven't plugged anything into for the last 5 years. Could be something that they've lived with being broken for so long they don't even remember it's broken anymore. All of us have stuff like that around our home. The bottom line is your home inspector is going to give you an inspection on the home. And we, again, highly recommend that you get one. We also recommend that either you or both of you, if there's two of you buying the home, at least one of you be there for the inspection. That's very important, so that there's good communication between you and the inspector. They can explain things that they find. They're going to give you a report. They're going to put it all in writing. But for example, let's say there's the inspector walks around the outside of the home. There's what's called normal stucco settling cracks, meaning that a stucco home that's been there for 15 years in California is liable to have some cracks in it. Could just be normal settling, could be from the heat because we get a lot of sun. Whatever it is, they're normal. But if you see that in an inspection report, settling cracks, now you're wondering, oh my God, is there a problem? Do I need to hire an engineer? If you're there, the inspector will probably tell you this is normal. We see them all the time. Don't worry about it. When you get the report, when the report is all done, the inspector is going to have this big, thick report which is going to take you through the home, room by room, all of the plumbing, all of the heating, the air conditioner, the attic, things of that nature. And they're going to have a summary page, either in the beginning or the end, where they're going to say, here's the whole report, but here are the 10 items that we think need some attention. At that point, you and your agent are going to sit down and you're going to try to figure out what's important enough to ask the seller to fix and what you can live with. This becomes part of the negotiation. Don't expect the seller to rebuild the home, but by the same token, if there's some major things there and you really want them repaired, then you're going to go back to the seller and ask them to repair. And eventually, hopefully, you and the seller are going to reach an agreement on what's going to be repaired and what's not. Maybe the seller repairs items 1 through 5 and you can live with items 6 through 10 because they're no big deal. I don't know. All we're going to say here is try not to make this a deal killer. Don't blow out a house that you can love with because maybe there's a drippy faucet or a cracked window pane and the seller won't fix it. Try and figure it out. There's a million things that could be involved here, so I can't get much more detailed than that. Just try and be cooperative and communicative to try and solve this with any issues that come up with the home inspection. All right, now we need to talk about the 17-day time period. In your purchase contract, there's a default setting that says for the first 17 days, everybody gets to figure out and check out this home and see if you want to continue to go down the road. In other words, let's get engaged, but in 17 days, we're going to find out if we're actually going to get married or not. During this time, you're going to review any disclosures the sellers has given you. You're going to review your own inspection report and get all of those issues solved if there's going to be any. Your loan process needs to be done. The appraisal needs to be in. Anything else that you ask the seller to do. At the end of 17 days, all of that needs to be done because the seller is now going to look at you and say, okay, I want all the contingency removed. You've had 17 days. Are you going to buy this home or not? Most of the time, in any transaction that closes, the buyer's going to say, yep, I've done all my homework and I'm fine with this. If there's still things that need to be done, depending on who hasn't done what they're supposed to, it could cause some issues. But for now, you're going to need to know in that 17-day time period and understand the removal of contingencies has some effect on your deposit if for any reason the escrow doesn't close. So it's not a date that you want to trifle with. You want to make sure everything's done and get handled during that 17-day time period. After that, then there's not a great deal left for you to do as the buyer. Next thing that's going to come up at some point down the road is you're going to get a call saying, okay, this is the amount of money you need to bring into the escrow for the balance of funds, and that needs to either be wired into escrow or you need to get a cashier's check for it. And most people bring that with them when they go to escrow to sign their loan documents. So let's talk about your loan documents. They are scary. Watch my lips. They're scary. This is where you find out that your $300,000 loan is going to cost you $28 million because when they add up all the interest involved, it's a much bigger number. Of course, the 28 is facetious, but it's a big number. Don't panic. Don't get weird. This is in every situation. Everybody that buys a house goes through this. The loan documents are thick. Oh, there's a lot to sign, and just get ready to go in there. And your escrow officer will explain them. But if you're the kind of person that needs to read every word and really analyze everything, when you go into escrow to sign your loan docs, that's not the time to do it. They don't have that kind of time, and they will assume that any questions like that you've already taken care of with your lender. So if you're someone who really needs to read everything over, you tell your lender and make him get those loan docs to you a couple of days early so that you know what it is you're signing. Most people are cool, and the escrow officer will certainly be able to explain to you the basics of things, but if you want to read every word and make sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed, you're going to need to do that before you get in there. All right, but you're going to need to sign those loan documents because they have to go back to the lender because obviously they need to know that you signed off saying that you know you have a house payment on this thing and you're going to have it for 30 years, however long you've gotten your loan. After that, you need to do a walkthrough of the home. Walkthroughs aren't quite as critical these days because of the home inspection, but there's two things you need to be aware of on a walkthrough. Number one, we recommend you do it so that you can make sure that any repairs that the seller was supposed to do when your negotiated agreement have indeed been done, have been done correctly. And secondly, we recommend that you always do a walkthrough on a vacant home because there could have been some damage, either vandalism or a pipe broke and water's running out the front door or whatever between the time you saw it or the time the home inspection was done and the time you're getting ready to close the escrow. And trust me, if there's any issues, you want to deal with those before the close of escrow, not after. You've lost your leverage after. The law may be on your side, but it's a whole lot easier to deal with it up front before the seller's received any money from the close of the escrow. After you've done your walkthrough, make sure your utilities are coordinated with the proper utility companies. Your agent will give you that information. But the bottom line is you want to call the utility companies and just give them a switchover date. You do not want the seller to shut them off and then you have to go back and turn them on. That's a much longer process. You just want someone to go on and read the meter, read the water meter, and transfer everything over. It's much simpler for you. And then at that point, you're real close to closing. And once it closes, your agent's going to hand you the keys, and that is when you break out the bubbly. Couple of items to note here. Number one, during the escrow period, do not go buy a new car. Do not change jobs. Do not quit your job. Do not get any new credit cards. Don't take on any debt. Don't mess with your finances. After the escrow is closed, you can do whatever you want. But before the escrow is closed, don't mess with it. Your lender many times will run an updated credit report a few days before the close of escrow, and if you've gone out and gotten 3 new Home Depot card, a Lowe's card, and a Sears card because you know you're going to be buying a bunch of stuff, your lender's going to freak out, and it could cause a problem with your loan. Or you quit your job. They're liable to call and do a job verification a few days before the close of escrow, and if they get, oh, Bob doesn't work here anymore, you got a real big issue. So Bob, quit your job after you close the escrow if that's what you're inclined to do, not before. The last thing you need to understand is that if your lender is dragging their feet and they haven't done what they're supposed to do, either at the 17-day time period or as you're getting ready to close and they're not getting on it, and your lender is dragging this thing out, expect there's going to be consequences, and the consequences can take the range from anything from the seller saying, you don't close on time and I'm going to blow you out of the water because I got 5 other other offers behind you and I don't think you can get it done, to, all right, I'll give you a 1-week extension, but it's going to cost you $100 a day for every day that it doesn't close. Or 3, okay, but you're going to release that $3,000 in escrow to me, and if you don't close within a week, I get to keep the $3,000. There will be consequences if your lender isn't getting it done, because quite honestly, you picked them. So you're responsible for whether they do it or not, and we see this more often than not. So make sure you get a good lender. Listen to your agent, unless you have one of your own that you know well. Other than that, that's about it for buyers buying an escrow. For buyers buying a home and what your escrow process is. Naturally, we can't cover everything. So if you have any questions, for gosh sakes, give us a call or get a hold of us. Our web address appears over my left shoulder, I think, when we edit these things. So get a hold of us. We don't bite. We are happy to answer any questions you might have. Our purpose here is for you to get good information, okay? Other than that, thank you very much for watching, and do not forget, be careful. It's a goofy real estate world out there. We don't want to see anybody get hurt. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you watching. Bye-bye.